Just lately, quite a few of you have been sending me questions asking how to improve and increase strength and control in your hands. So for example, this came in from Arabinder a few weeks ago. I'm having a problem while working with my left hand, e.g. when I'm playing a shell chord like C major 7, I use my thumb and my pinky finger, and at that very moment my other fingers rise and it doesn't look nice. So what Arabinder is talking about is playing that shape and struggling to control these fingers sat in the middle between the pinky and the thumb. Okay. Another good one came in from Stephanie. I'm having trouble moving my fingers and thumbs across each other when playing scales, etc. In a weird way, my fingers don't feel strong enough. How do I strengthen my fingers? Okay, so again, what Stephanie is talking about is that kind of movement if we're playing a scale. Okay, really important for the piano, how to get thumb under fingers and fingers over thumb. Yeah, it needs a little bit of flexibility, a little bit of control. And finally, I had a really good question come in from YouTube user CrossFit Iron. Hey Bill, do you have a video or could you do one on scale daily practice, a sort of definitive way to improve scales, arpeggios, chords as efficiently as possible with a sort of daily routine or step program to follow? Now that's not exactly related to the questions that Arabinder and Stephanie were asking, but as we'll see in a second, it's all kind of part of the same topic area. So what I'm going to do today is talk about 3 techniques that you can use to improve your hand strength and control in your piano practice. Now, you'll find this most useful if you're relatively new to playing the piano, but even if you've been playing for quite a long while, then you should find some of the ideas that I'm going to talk about really useful. They should help you to improve your smoothness and the fluidity of your technique. Before we get going with our 3 techniques though, there's one really important idea that we need to understand. When people talk about this kind of problem, they often use the word strength. Oh, my fingers aren't strong enough to stretch this far. My fingers aren't strong enough to hold a middle finger up while my 2 outer fingers are down. And really, it's not a question of strength, and you won't solve that kind of problem just by making your hands stronger. Yeah. So if you're sat there kind of squeezing a tennis ball, that's not going to help. And in fact, it might even hinder you. Yeah. Strength exercises for your hand put you at risk of injury. They might make your hand stiffer than ideally it would be. So we're not really thinking about strength. We're thinking very much more about fine motor control, and we're thinking about how to improve the neurological relationships between our brain and our hands. Yeah, how can we get our brain more carefully trained to make very fine motor movements in each finger individually? Yeah, that is our aim. That's not to say that we can't draw comparisons with other kinds of athletic training, because playing the piano in so many ways is an athletic activity. Yeah, there's an awful lot of coordination and dexterity involved. There's there are questions of balance involved. How do we weight our body to move up and down the particular the keyboard in particular ways? There are even questions of endurance if we want to play the piano for a long time. So we can draw comparisons with working out in a gym. It's just much more than a simple question of thinking in terms of strength. Technique number 1 seems really obvious. If you want greater control and greater apparent strength in your hands and fingers, practice the piano regularly. Okay, now before you jump ahead trying to find technique number 2, just stick around for a second, because I want to think about why that is the case. Okay, why is it important to practice regularly? Because if you understand why, it can help motivate you to practice every single day. When your brain is learning something new, what it really likes is stimulus little and often. Okay, so the regularity, the often part, is more important than the actual volume of work you do. That's why, and I've said this 1,000 times before, it's better just to do 10, 15, 20 minute practice every single day than to do twice the total amount of time that represents in one huge block, like on a Sunday or something. Okay, if you spend all of Sunday practicing and then do nothing all week until the next Sunday and spend all of the next Sunday practicing and then skip the whole week, you will not do as well, you will not make progress as quickly as if you just did 10, 15, 20 minutes a day. And that's because your brain likes its stimulus little and often. Okay, it's also particularly true that it's good in those sort of little and often sessions. It's really good to practice repetitive movements that you will make a lot and which promote the strength of each individual finger and the control you have over each individual finger. And the great news is that those exercises are pre-designed for you. Scales. Okay, now scales are useful in lots and lots of ways, but the thing they are most useful for is really refining that fine control of your fingers. And when, you know, in the YouTube tutorials that I make and in real live piano lessons that you might have, when your piano teacher is obsessing about the smoothness and the evenness of your scales and trying to get you to kind of achieve the impossible in terms of evenness, what that is doing is really developing the very, very, very fine control you have over the movement of each single finger. So, little and often, practice regularly. At the moment, if you're not practicing regularly, do everything you can to get into a routine, because it is the routine that is your friend. That is what will help you develop that strength and control probably faster than anything else. The second technique you can use for improving your control and your apparent strength on the piano keyboard is to employ micro practice in your daily routine. Now, a micro practice session might only be 10 or 15 seconds long, but the idea is that when you're running a micro practice program, you focus on just one single movement, maybe two, but ideally just one, and you do it lots of times a day, spread out through the day. Okay, so for example, say you're Stephanie, trying to improve your control as your fingers go over and your thumbs go under. What you might do every time you walk past your piano or your keyboard is just sit down and play a single C major scale, maybe right and left hand. Okay, that's it. That's your micro practice session done. Go away, do something else. Next time you're walking past the piano, do the same thing again. Now, you do that in addition to your regular practice routine. Okay, obviously it has practical limitations. You're not always around a piano, but I reckon you can do this kind of thing at work. You know, if you're in a meeting or something, or if you're sat at your desk, just sat there and do it. Try to make it as realistic as possible. You know, don't do it on the side of your leg or something, but sit down at your desk, go through the movements of a C major scale, right and left hand. Visualize having a piano in front of you, because that will help. Okay, and that can count as a micro practice session. If you have a digital piano at home, you don't need to switch it on every time. Just sit down and play that scale, focusing on that movement. Okay, it's better if you can switch it on, because then you're getting you're getting kind of audible feedback, as it were, and you can also focus on smoothness and control and weighting and control and all the rest of it. But you don't absolutely have to. The point of micro practice is you do, as I say, 10, 15, 20 sessions every single day in addition to the practice you're already doing. Now, my conception of micro practice is really comes from a guy called Pavel Tsatsouline, who is not a piano player at all, as far as I know. Pavel is a specialist in weight training, essentially, with a focus on body weight training, calisthenics, things like that, push-ups, pull-ups. And his big concept that's really big in that world at the moment is called greasing the groove. And his idea is that strength is a skill, and it's a skill you need to practice, not by blasting yourself to death doing 100 press-ups every day, but just doing 3 or 4 at once, but several times a day. And if you do that, and I can vouch for this because I do it myself, if you just get down every now and then and do 3 press-ups, then the total number of press-ups you can do in one session increases. The reason being is that you are reinforcing the neural circuits that control your press-up skills. Okay, you are improving the skill of doing a press-up. Greasing the groove is his term for it, but really all you're doing is strengthening the kind of the brain, the nervous system connections that control the movements you're making. So it's the same kind of thing. If you're interested in the science behind that, do Google greasing the groove. But it's very much the same kind of thinking. Micro practice, focus on one movement at a time, 10, 15, 20 times a day. Don't let it replace your regular practice, okay? Technique number 3 is to focus on stuff that you find difficult. Let me give you an example. I've got a song here that I'm working on. It's one I wrote last year, actually, Sailing a Starlit Sea. You might have seen the songwriting tutorial that I wrote this for, and I finally got around to writing a piano arrangement for it. And as is often the way when you compose stuff, there are bits of it that I can't play. Okay, so I'm really practicing this because it's really embarrassing not to be able to play your own music. So this bar in particular, I don't know if you can see that, I'm really struggling with here. We've got this awkward triplet and there's some jumps in the chords in the right hand there. Let me just see if I can play it for you. No, a little bit awkward on there. Missed out a bit of the left hand there. Ah, got it. Little pause, let that sink in. Let me try again. No, wrong note there. And again. Yeah, okay. Gradually getting there. But that is making me work hard, okay? I can feel the mental strain. I'm coordinating left hand and right hand. I'm coordinating my right leg because I'm having to pedal in quite awkward places to hold that together. And that is good practice. Now, focusing on problems like that, attacking the problem, to use a phrase that I like to use, is good general practice technique anyway, okay, because it saves you wasting time on stuff that you can already play. But it's also really good for improving the control and the apparent strength in your hands, because it's yet another way that you are forcing your brain to work hard to lay down and reinforce those neural circuits that govern the relationship between your brain and your hands, okay? As a general rule, the harder something feels at the piano keyboard, the more painful it is, the more agonizing it is. I don't mean literally painful, by the way. If it's literally painful, stop, because you're injuring yourself. But the more kind of mentally agonizing it is, the harder your brain is working to reinforce those neural circuits, okay, that are controlling your hands. So pick one or two things that you find difficult, and the kind of stuff I mean, the stuff where maybe to do with hand independence, or where you've got quite a complicated bit, or where you're struggling to make one hand or one finger do something while the others are doing something. Pick something like that and really fight at it for 5 minutes, okay? Really go at it, and pain is gain, yeah? If it feels like your head's going to drop off, as I said, that is good. That is hard mental work. That is improving the relationship between brain and hands. That is helping you develop that feeling of apparent strength. And kind of in contrast to the micro practice technique I was talking a second ago, where you're doing just one movement but 14, 15, 16 times a day, this is focusing on a variety of movements. So it's giving you a bit of contrast in what you're doing there, yeah? You're forcing your brain to do a variety of different things, and that's good. So if you combine these 3 techniques, the regular practice, the micro practice, and the focusing on what is difficult, you should find quite quickly that your hands begin to feel stronger. As I said at the start, this is really important, it is not about actual physical growth of your muscles. It's not about having kind of incredible Hulk hands, yeah, but it's that feeling of apparent strength and control that comes from a very strong relationship between hand and brain. Remember that if you're a little bit older, it will take a little bit longer. Your brain is a little bit less plastic, okay? So this stuff will take you longer than if you're 5, 10, 15, 20 years old, okay? But you can do it just as effectively as a 5-year-old, yeah? It will just take you the extra time. So those 3 techniques, stick at them consistently, and I guarantee they will solve all your problems to do with strength and control on the piano keyboard. So that's about it for another piano questions answer tutorial. Thanks very much to those of you who asked me the questions about strength and control on the keyboard and practice frequency and all that sort of stuff. If any of you have any other questions about any aspect of playing the piano, improvising, music theory, learning, practice, anything like that, ping them over, because your questions are my single best source of ideas for tutorials. So please do send me any questions that you happen to have. Send me an email, put them in a comment on one of my videos, whatever. They are all gratefully received. I can't answer them all, I can't answer them all, but I will certainly pick out the ones that I think will offer the greatest benefit to most people. Okay, I'll just round up saying what I usually say. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, just hit the button down there, bottom right hand corner. Please do check out my book, How to Really Play the Piano, the stuff your teacher never taught you. Really great if you are just starting out with improvisation, learning about chords, things like that. Maybe check out my Patreon crowdfunding campaign, patreon.com/Bill Hilton, and also remember to follow me on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. All the links are in the description text below. Okay, there we go. I will see you next time.